Well, I think there's a couple of things. Certainly talent and the ability to attract talent. Mutual companies, sometimes with the locations they have, it's tough to get younger people to come to some of the locations they have. So they have to be innovative in terms of how they develop their workforce and bring the strengths that they need to their locations, rather than perhaps people coming to their locations, allowing them to work more flexibly. Any way they can to bring talent into their organization is an important piece. And the other thing is inflation. Everybody's dealing with inflation. When you look at inflation for mutuals, typically mutuals have much lower loss ratios than other companies, and they have a very good, strong understanding of their insureds. But they're going to be faced with inflation on the expense side as well, whether it be service contracts, things of that nature, that are going to pressure them in working through their business. And they're not going to be able to get away from the inflation on the loss side and loss trends that are out there, the social inflation that's there. Everybody's faced with that. But mutuals have always done well with their knowledge of their insureds and working closely with their insureds. And it's always been a way perhaps to get through and might be helpful in terms of dealing with social insurance. Well, we heard it this morning about the different ways to attract talent. That's something new. Many different ideas of going out to universities. I've heard different things that people are doing and working through different organizations to develop talent, and through professional designations that they might be able to deal with other types, perhaps not a college degree, but an associate's degree, to bring talent into the insurance industry is one thing. On the inflation side, it's just constant, typical working through how do I control expenses, being diligent about it all the way through. There's not much more you can do with it in that regard. But then monitoring on the loss side, really monitoring the impact. We've had 20 years of low inflationary periods. And when you look at an actuary trying to project out losses, they have to realize that inflation is higher. It's not in the historical loss trends. So mutuals have to look at it, and every insurance company has to look at it in terms of the last 20 years. I can't just take that and project out. That's not going to be the way losses turn out. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be pressure all primary insurance companies are seeing pressure in terms of reinsurance and the pricing that's out there. In some cases, the property coverages just aren't there. Certainly in terms of the levels and what levels reinsurers are willing to reinsure down to. Companies are having to deal with new ways to manage those losses, the frequency of severity, so to speak. Those are pressures they're certainly seeing rate increases, but in some cases, reinsurers are not even willing to write those layers with rate increases. They just don't want to be on those layers. That's not what their business model is. Well, I think one of the most important things is the connection with your policyholders and your insureds. And mutuals usually have a very strong story to tell there. That's one of the strengths of the mutual insurance industry, because they know their business. And making sure that they're looking at it from that perspective in terms of, we know our business, stay on top of the loss trends. What's there in terms of that. The strongest mutuals that we see come through are typically those that are conservatively run in terms of the loss trends and watch that very closely. So with inflation, now's the time that you really have to watch that. But generally, it really comes back to the connection to policyholders and their ability to grow their business through their policyholders and their work in their environment and how they're connected to their own communities out there. Well, one of the things that we're doing is looking at MGAs. MGAs play a bigger and bigger role in the insurance market and the risks they bring to insurers. They bring programs out there. Insurers can consider if they want to work with it. But what we're looking at is the performance of those MGAs and how they work with their insurance partners. So we have a performance assessment for what we refer to as delegated underwriting authority enterprises, very often MGAs. But how do they perform in terms of the book of business they produce? What's their relationship with insurance companies, the strength and talent that they have on staff, how the book's performing, and the breadth of programs that they have. So the relationships and strength of relationships they have with their insurance partners. That performance assessment we think will be valuable for companies to look at and say, the strength of one MGA versus another.